Will the Timberwolves trade Rob Dillingham at the deadline in just a few weeks? Reading between the lines on what the Wolves have done and said next.
You are Locked On Timberwolves, your daily Minnesota Timberwolves podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Wolves podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Before tip-off tonight, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday, including this one, from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern. That's 5 to 6:30 Central Time over there on FanDuel. Happy Friday, everybody. Happy weekend and happy Timberwolves game day. The Timberwolves take on the Houston Rockets. The first time the Wolves have matched up against the Rockets so far this year. That's tonight at 8:30 on ESPN. We're going to preview the game later. No, Anthony Edwards is not playing. He is still out. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the matchup, what to expect from Houston, which is now a couple of games behind the Wolves in the West. So we'll close the show with that. But I want to start with Rob Dillingham. The trade deadline is just under 3 weeks away. It's like 2.5 weeks from now. And there, continues to be some buzz around the Timberwolves being open to trading Rob Dillingham, which should really come as no surprise at this point now that he's officially back out of the rotation. Micah Nori spoke on the radio in the Twin Cities on Thursday and addressed this. And also, well, he's also just not in the rotation. Dillingham's not. So we'll talk about, is there an appetite for trading Rob Dillingham on the Wolves side? Are other teams interested? What are the prospects he could get back into the rotation? We'll talk about that whole situation here first, because it is officially trade season with the deadline less than, well under a month away. And then in the middle here on the show today, we're going to talk about the Timberwolves offense, which has an impressive stat going. How many games in a row the Wolves have scored 100 points? It's historical. We'll talk about that and what's changed, what's most significant about what's changed with the Wolves offense and is kind of lifting them up to such an impressive, impressive scoring totals over the last few weeks. So we'll get to that here on the show today as well. Big thank you off the top for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube, as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. All right. So Rob Dillingham. Are the Timberwolves going to trade Rob Dillingham? Well, let's start here. Let's start with the ESPN article. Bobby Marks and Kevin Pelton. Of course, Bobby Marks, former NBA front office guy for the New Jersey Nets. Kevin Pelton, who is in at least one, if not two, NBA front offices, advanced stats guy for ESPN. And they went through all teams in the NBA. And every team except for two, they were able to list a player who, I'll say what they said. Let's see. A player to watch. A player to watch at the deadline, which is February 5th. So if you're scoring at home, if you're keeping track at home, what did I say? It was 2.5 weeks from now. It's actually 3 weeks from yesterday. So 3 weeks from yesterday is the NBA trade deadline. Thursday, February 5th at 2 p.m. Central. What's a player to watch for the Wolves? Well, of course, it's Rob Dillingham. I'm going to read what Kevin Pelton wrote about it. He said, how the Timberwolves and the rest of the NBA value Dillingham could be one of the more interesting questions before the deadline. Minnesota believed enough in Dillingham to trade a he calls it a precious 2031 first-round pick, as well as a 2030 swap with a Spurs team likely to be contending to draft Dillingham at number 8 in last year's draft. 19 months later, Dillingham has yet to consistently crack Coach Chris Finch's rotation, and his production has trended the wrong way this season. Dillingham is shooting just 33% on two-pointers, worst among players with at least 100 attempts this season. This could be an opportunity for another team to get a recent top 10 pick on a bargain contract, or the last best chance for the Wolves to salvage some value from the original trade. Okay. All of the above is true. I can't argue with anything Kevin Pelton said. As of right now, it looks like that deal was very bad for Minnesota. And I want to evaluate the situation based on what we know right now and not what we think obviously what we would project Rob Dillingham to be matters here, right? It matters a lot, but also what we've seen to this point. The Timberwolves have been in the Rob Dillingham business for a year and a half plus. They've seen him up close, shoot-arounds, practices, film room, games, training camps, 2 of them now, right? And he's not in the rotation. It doesn't mean he'll never be an NBA rotation guy. It doesn't mean he doesn't still have impressive, I would even argue all-star caliber upside is what I said after the draft, because I think the offensive tools are there, probably borderline all-star. I think at the time I talked about him being like more of a 6 man of the year type candidate in the future, maybe a borderline all-star down the road. That was what I thought his realistic ceiling looked like, if you will. He's only been in the league a year and a half, but at the same time, it's a year and a half that Minnesota's seen him in all the situations I already listed. He's not in the rotation now, despite Minnesota needing some offensive generation, some playmaking, some facilitating out of the backcourt with the extremely long in the tooth Mike Conley and Ant pulling double, triple, quadruple duty in every way, shape, or form with this team. And instead, it's Bones Hyland, who was cast off by the Denver Nuggets after Tim Connelly left Denver, and then cast off by the LA Clippers. He was waived last year during the season. And the Timberwolves picked him up, put him, and signed him to a two-way deal. So nobody wanted him in an NBA deal when he was a free agent last year in like March or whenever it was the Wolves signed him. I think it was March. And the Timberwolves signed him to a two-way deal and then brought him back this offseason on a standard NBA contract. And he's been good. Bones has been good. And this actually factors into the whole calculus. I'm not just listing this off because he's taken Rob Dillingham's potential rotation spot, but also because this is part of the calculus when it comes to, do the Wolves trade Dillingham to upgrade that position? Now, Rob Dillingham's contract matters here too, because he's one of the few tradable contracts that is a guy the Wolves would be willing to trade, and also a contract that you're going to be able to match with something of value. Rob's making almost $6.6 million this year. Like, obviously the Wolves are not trading Ant, Rudy, Julius Randle. They're extremely unlikely to trade Jaden McDaniels, Naz Reid, and I would actually put Dante DiVincenzo in that same category. Like, they're not trading him unless it's in a monster deal. And there's no monster deal that makes sense in my mind. And they're not trading Joan Beringer unless it's because they need to, because they're going to get, it's a kind of an in-between deal for a high upside guy. That's very unlikely. And then everybody else, TJ Shannon, Bones Hyland, Joe Ingles, Leonard Miller, Jalen Clark, combination of, like, Jalen Clark's too valuable for what he makes. Nobody's likely to be like super interested in the rest of those guys, and you'd have to combine salaries to get anything back of value. So that leaves Mike Conley and Rob Dillingham as your trade chips. Conley, of course, is an expiring at $10.7 million, is potentially valuable. Certainly when combining with Rob Dillingham, I've talked about the two of them in a trade for, say, Kobe White, which there's a recent report that the Wolves, the interest has cooled, the talks have cooled between the Bulls and Wolves in a potential trade involving Kobe White for whatever that's worth. I think it's worth something. I don't think the Wolves want to trade Conley. Locker room reasons, still, can be a steady hand for 10, 12, 14 minutes a game. But they would love to upgrade that rotation role. And so if they can do it by trading Rob Dillingham and not trading Mike Conley, that's best case scenario, which is a much narrower window of potential targets. And we'll get into that another day. When it comes to Rob Dillingham, what's the risk reward here? If it's a rental, do you really want to trade a 21-year-old that you just gave up assets for a year and a half ago? I don't know. Like, that's the question we're trying to answer here. And Micah Nori had some comments on the radio, which I just want to read off. This was the comments were, I guess, aggregated in this Will Reggett's article at Sports Illustrated, SI.com. And he said, he says some stuff about how hard it is to play the point guard in the NBA. It takes 3 years to be good at it, blah, blah, blah. Micah, doing what Micah's got to do in this situation in the radio interview, talking about Rob. And then he makes a good point about how Dillingham's been a scorer since he was a kid, and he's trying to develop as a point guard. And if you think about Rob Dillingham's game this season, the low 2-point percentage that Kevin Pelton at ESPN brought up, he's like 33% from two, which is really bad. He struggled a little bit at the rim. We saw him miss a layup at the buzzer, probably thankfully the other night in the blowout win that he shot he never should have taken. But how often does Rob shake the first line of the defense and pull up for like an 18, 19-footer? That's fine if you're Kevin Durant or you're Anthony Edwards and you're shooting those shots at 45, 50+%. That's a good shot then. But it's not a good shot when you're shooting 33%, right? There's a big difference there. You have to make that shot. If you're going to pull up and shoot a mid-range jumper in the half-court offense with, 10 or more seconds of the shot clock, like, that's not a good shot unless you're going to make it. And what's Rob got to do? Well, he's got to create for others or get to the rim. And That's another thing that Micah Nori mentions in this quote is he says, you have to be able to navigate the length and the height. You need to get into the paint, penetrate, pass it out. And we're not seeing that from Rob Dillingham. We're seeing high level of difficulty, high degree of difficulty, shot attempts, trying to force the issue. But he does go on to talk about how he's competed defensively, even though teams hunt him out because he's so small. I'm paraphrasing this part. And then he goes on to make what I think is the most important point. And this is something I've said on the show many times. He says, this is a direct quote, if Rob was the 8th pick in Washington or the 8th pick in Charlotte, and no offense to those teams, but if you could just run him out there every single night and really not care about the outcome or the result, you'd have a different story, as opposed to a team that has been to the Western Conference Finals twice and trying to take that next step, end quote. 100% nail on the head. And this is what I'm saying about Jean Beringer. I talked about this yesterday. If you want to hear about me talk about Beringer and whether or not he should or could get minutes moving forward for the Wolves, this is it, right? The difference is Beringer has taken the bull by the horns in his opportunities, and Dillingham has not. But you're not going to carve out a role on a good team for a guy who's been a bad player when he's played. And I'm not saying Rob's a bad basketball player overall, that he'll always be bad. It's just the results have not been positive. And there's now enough of a track record, enough of a sample to say, all right, is a change of scenery necessary? And he's the primary trade chip for Minnesota headed to a trade deadline 3 weeks from now, just under 3 weeks. And his position is the one they're trying to upgrade. Zach Lowe said on the Zach Lowe show, I think it was late last week, that the Timberwolves are he called it, I think he said the word lock. The Timberwolves are a lock to upgrade their backcourt. Now, there's 2 guys they can trade. It's Rob Dillingham or it's Mike Conley or it's both. That's basically it. You can throw in a second-round pick. There's a pick swap in there they could do in a couple of years. But that's kind of it. So I think it's highly likely that Dillingham is traded at the deadline for all of the reasons that I've mentioned. And Nori did finish his conversation by saying that he's not on the outs, I think is the word that he used. What did he say? He said, by no means is he on the outs. It's just a matter of we're trying to win games. Bones has been playing very, very well, and you're going to have growing pains. Okay? That's it. They did this because they hoped he could be Conley's replacement, just like they drafted Beringer, hoping he can eventually be Gobert's replacement 2 to 3 years down the road. Well, we're in year 2 for Dillingham, and if they think he's shown enough, and there's not a requisite, like a deal that lines up with Dillingham's salary and the risk reward there, then they're going to keep him. Because Conley's going to be a free agent. You're going to need to do something there. Give it another shot next year. If there's a deal that makes sense, Dillingham may have more value, does have more value now than he will next year. If he struggles again next year when given a greater opportunity, it's going to tank his value. He's going to be a throw-in, like Jarrett Culver in the Pat Bev trade, several years ago. There's some value now, and that's why it's not a ton of value, but it's more than you're going to have if you try and trade him a year from now. So what's the risk reward here? What's the potential deal? I mean, this is something we'll come back to, and I'll try and find some salaries that could be swapped for Bones, some potential, or not Bones, for Dillingham, and find some potential trades the Wolves could make with Rob Dillingham. But this is the situation we're in. I think it's more likely than not he's traded because of the combination of lack of production, the need at the position, the lack of tradable assets the Wolves have, and the fact that now is the time, as Pelton said, to try to recoup some value for a trade you've already made, and there's already some assets sunk into it. And that's why I think Dillingham's more likely than not to be traded. We'll talk about the Wolves offense next. An impressive stat about the Timberwolves offense as we sit here now at the midway point of the season. We'll do that here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our friends at DoorDash. The season is heating up. We're now at the midway point games-wise. We're less than a month out from the All-Star break, and DoorDash has a way to keep fans in their bag the whole way through. Whether you're watching the highlights, the tunnel fits, or just your favorite player, DoorDash makes the entire season more fun because every player has their bag. With DoorDash, fans have one too. DoorDash keeps your snacks stocked, your gear fresh, and your watch party vibes absolutely on point. There are nights when your team stresses you out. The Wolves will do that from time to time. Let DoorDash become your post-game therapy. Sometimes you just need dessert now. Maybe those late-night interviews hit, and suddenly you need chips at midnight. DoorDash is built exactly for that. I'll tell you what happened to me yesterday was we had a crock pot malfunction. We're planning to DoorDash, I'll admit that, But this is our go-to if something goes wrong, right? We fed the kids what we could. We didn't give them the food that didn't work out. We gave them something else. My wife and I ordered DoorDash for when the kids went to bed, and that's what we did with the night. We got ourselves some burgers and fries. It was fantastic. We tend to do that. It's a fantastic way if something goes wrong, or if you just want to plan for it, or maybe the Timberwolves lose and you need to, drown your sorrows with whatever your comfort food is for DoorDash. From tip-off to overtime, stay in your bag and order on DoorDash. Get snacks, drinks, gear, whatever gets you through the season delivered right to your door. DoorDash, in your bag all season long. Big thank you once again for making Locked On Wolves your first listen of the day. And of course, thanks for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out the Everydayer Club. It's all new. You'll get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On Wolves compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and every other major podcast app. Plus, you'll also get an invite to the members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server. Includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. I was a little tardy joining the Discord party, but I'm on there now. So if you want to jump in and, chat about whatever Wolves topic you want to chat about, I'm on Discord. Go to LockedOnWolves.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes. Again, LockedOnWolves.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. All right. The Timberwolves offense, believe it or not, has set a historical mark. It has a little ways to go to set the mark, but is climbing. What stat is it? The Timberwolves scored 100 points in their 99th consecutive game the other night. It's the third longest streak of scoring 100-plus points in NBA history for any team, which is insane. They've scored 100 straight points in every game, regular season game, since last December. Not December of 25, December of 24. So for over a year now, the Wolves have scored at least 100 points in every regular season game. They're still 30 behind the Spurs, who did it from 1978 to 1980, and the Nuggets, who did it 136 times back in 81 to 82. So they're 30 games behind second place, which would be still in the regular season this year. And they're 37, which I guess would be right toward the end of the season. Actually, I think they'd have to wait till opening night next year to break the Nuggets record. They're at 99. The next closest team behind them is the Hawks from December of 22 to January of 24. I was really surprised that the top two teams are teams from the 80s, 70s and 80s. And then you go on down the list after the Wolves. The next three are in the 2000 teens to 20s. Hawks, Bucks, Pacers each had a long stretch of at least 81 games. But the Wolves are at 100 straight now and going and counting. So what's changed the most for the Wolves offense? Well, the biggest thing, since January of last year, the Timberwolves have begun to offensive rebound at a much higher clip. They've actually backed off of it a little bit here of late, but last year, late in the season, that was a big part of their offense, which is funny. We're going to talk about Houston here in a minute. That basically is the Houston Rockets offense, and it's working for them. But the offensive rebound rate increasing is one thing. The shot mix has always been very impressive under Chris Finch. I shouldn't say always. Over the last 3 years, we'll say 2.5 years. But Minnesota, according to Cleaning the Glass, they have the 10th best location effective field goal percentage. What that means is it's essentially a shot. It gives you a sense of the team's shot profile, right? It's if the Wolves shot the league average field goal percentage from each location with where they shoot. So quality of shot. How would they shoot the ball? And they're 10th in the league in that. And they're 4th in actual effective field goal percentage because they've shot it so well from certain areas like mid-range, right? Right now, in terms of frequency, Minnesota is top 10 in corner threes. They're top 10 in rim attempts. And I'm sorry, a minute ago I said I did say they were 10th. They're 10th in location effective field goal percentage, 4th in actual effective field goal percentage. They're 14th in three-point rate on Cleaning the Glass. That number's a little different if you look at Basketball Reference. Accuracy-wise, they actually haven't been quite as good from long mid-range, but they've been pretty good from short mid-range, and they've been great at the rim. They've been great outside the arc. They're 3rd in three-point percentage right now. They're 3rd in non-corner threes, so above the break threes. They're 3rd in accuracy with those shots. Where have they improved the most? Well, if you compare this year's shot profile to last year's, they are shooting a little bit less outside the arc and a little bit more from the mid-range, but they're also shooting at the rim more. and they're making their shots at the rim. They're 6th in rim percentage in the league, and they're 9th in rim attempt rate. That's really important. And also the increase in offensive rebound rate, the free throw rate's gone up over the last year and a half. Those things have all contributed to it. And then, of course, there's Anthony Edwards. And we talked about this. I mentioned it the other day on the show. But and I cannot overstate how impressive this is. And I'll bring this up. I'll make it the headlining topic of a show at some point, because if this trend continues, which it appears as though it will, Anthony Edwards has improved, or I should say improved, and he's shooting a career high, both, from every single shot range on the floor this year. He's shooting a career best inside 3 feet from the rim. He's 7 percentage points above his second best season at the rim. He's shooting the best of his career from 3 to 10 feet. He's a percentage point ahead of last year. He's shooting a career best from 10 to 16 feet, 1.5 percentage points better than his second best, and a career best from 16 feet to the three-point arc. And he is 4 percentage points nearly better than his second best mark from that range, which, by the way, was last year. And his 3-point percentage, he right now is 1.4 percentage points ahead of where he was where he finished last year outside the arc. So he is shooting a career best from 0 to 3 feet, 3 to 10 feet, 10 to 16 feet, 16 feet to the 3-point line, and outside the arc. That is incredible. It's incredible. He's also shooting a lot more catch and shoot threes, which is like off the dribble. He's getting to the rim more and shooting more from the mid range. And outside the arc, he's shooting more off the catch. Last year, less than half of his 3-point attempts were assisted, which means more than half the time, do the math, and to be exact, 52.5% of the time, he was shooting off the dribble outside the arc. And he's good at it, but it's always a harder shot. This year, 60% of his 3-point attempts have been assisted, which is his highest mark since his rookie season, when he was playing off the ball a lot more. For how much he plays on the ball, what does that mean? That means he's initiating some offense, he's getting off the ball early, and he gets it back for a catch and shoot opportunity. Or he's pump faking and he's driving to, a couple of his different sweet spots in the mid-range where he's gotten really good. Shooting 46% from 10 to 16 feet. That's good. That's not a bad shot for Ant anymore. And then also getting to the rim, where he's shooting at the rim more often than he was last year. Still a little behind where he was a few years ago. But again, the percentage is better, and obviously the free throw rate is up too. So the average distance on his shot is down pretty significantly from last season. Those things all matter. And it all equals to a much more efficient Timberwolves offense, and Ant is driving that bus. So really positive for Ant, really positive for the Wolves to see the offense trending the way that it has been. All right, let's close today by talking about the Timberwolves matchup against the Rockets. First time the Wolves have seen the Rockets this year. We'll get to that preview here next. Today's episode of Locked On Wolves is brought to us by our title sponsors at FanDuel. Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel's making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. That's tonight. Today's Friday. Get excited. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame, a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action starts. Fridays from 6 to 7:30 Eastern, that's 5 to 6:30 p.m. Central Time, have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. Opening the FanDuel app during Happy Hour always brings something new, boosts, bonuses, and surprises. It's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. The timing is perfect, right before the games and right before your weekend officially starts. It adds energy to Friday night basketball without overthinking it. Big game tonight, Wolves-Rockets. Get on FanDuel and look at the bets you want to make before the Wolves take on the Rockets in the national TV game tonight at 8:30. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour. Every Friday from 6 to 7:30 Eastern, that's 5 to 6:30 Central. A little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, Timberwolves-Rockets. So Houston was everybody's offseason darling. And I said on the show, I thought Houston and Denver probably had the best offseasons, but I was still dubious about some of the other pieces for the Rockets, especially after Fred VanVleet tore his ACL in training camp just prior to training camp, I guess. They started out the year hot, made me look stupid. They were great. And they're still good. Like, their point differential is actually better than the Wolves. It's third best in the West. But they're like seventh in the Western Conference standings right now because they've lost some close games here lately. They've hit a bit of a rough patch. They have had some injuries, even though they're a pretty deep team. It's funny because, like, Van Vliet obviously has been out, which isn't, I don't mean like funny, but kind of crazy, I guess, that Van Vliet's been out. Tari Eason's been banged up, coming back from injury. And they haven't gotten as much from Dorian Finney-Smith's only played 9 games. He's not playing Thursday night, by the way. We'll get into that. Guys that used to be in the rotation for them, like a Jayshawn Tate, like, they're not really part of it, but they're getting more from guys like Josh Okogie, right? Old friend Josh Okogie started 22 games for the Rockets and has been pretty good. Actually can shoot threes now. Remember when teams literally wouldn't guard him? He never shot above 29% outside the arc in a Wolves uniform. He's shooting 39% on almost 2.5 attempts per game for Houston. So Kevin Durant's been amazing, especially given 37 years old, a few years after an Achilles injury and how bad Phoenix was last year. He's been great. Alperen Sengun's been awesome. All-star season for him. Amen Thompson's been very good. I think I've always been, and I said this preseason, Amen Thompson's great. I like him. He's an incredible defender. I thought we were a little bit, collectively as a basketball society, we're maybe a little too excited about what he could be this year offensively. He's been good. He's averaging 19 a game and 19, 7.5, and 5, but he's still shooting 19% on threes and still shooting more than 2 a game. And on twos, like, he's good, but somebody with his athleticism who also can't shoot threes should be a little better than 57.5% on twos. Now, again, I'm splitting hairs. He's been really good, like, really, really good. Not quite all-star caliber, but like just kind of the next of, not quite on the bubble, but just outside looking in, right? He'd be next up if we were talking March Madness bubble. Doing the bracketology thing. So I don't mean to just put down Amen Thompson as part of this preview, but there's a reason this team is now kind of on the cusp of the play-in, sitting right there between the play-in and the non-play-in teams. Ultimately, they're going to finish in the same neighborhood as Minnesota, which is why this game matters so much. And they're only playing 3 times, just like Minnesota and San Antonio. The Wolves already have the tiebreaker tied up against the Spurs, wrapped up against the Spurs, because they've already beaten them twice. They're only playing 3 times. They're only playing Houston 3 times. This is the first one. Anthony Edwards is out tonight. That obviously matters, a big deal. It's a huge deal. The Wolves beat the Bucks on Tuesday without Rudy Gobert. Gobert's going to play. So it's just Ant and TJ Shannon that are missing for the Wolves. And for the Rockets, in their game on Thursday, and I'm actually recording this during their game against OKC. I'm going to go back and watch a decent portion of that game, but it's a relatively close game now around halftime. And Tari Eason did not play against the Thunder, and Dorian Finney-Smith did not play against the Thunder. They've each kind of been in and out of the lineup here lately, both with ankle injuries. There's a chance they both play against the Wolves. This is a back-to-back, obviously, for Houston. I think it's interesting that they wouldn't play against OKC. They would play against the Wolves. I say that. It actually kind of makes sense. Now, on the Ant side of things, the Wolves are on the front end of a back-to-back on Friday because on Saturday they play San Antonio, and they already have the tiebreaker, the season series one against the Spurs, and they don't against the Rockets. So if it's simply a back-to-back, don't play them in a back-to-back, coming, trying to keep the foot in good shape for Ant, I would rather him play against Houston and not play against the Spurs. But on the other hand, they might just want another consecutive day. He hasn't played since Sunday, so this is like, all right, give him 5 full days, and perhaps he comes back against the Spurs. He officially was, Chris Finch called him day-to-day in his media availability on Friday, and then they ruled him out by on Thursday. They ruled him out by Thursday afternoon. So more than 24 hours before Friday's game, they were already ruling him out, which is a little concerning, but it could be just planned given the nature of the back-to-back on Friday, Saturday. What to look out for against the Rockets? Well, Houston is by far the best offensive rebounding team in the NBA. And that is their thing. That's what they do. It's not even close. They're 4.3 percentage points ahead of the next best offensive rebounding team. 39.8%, 40%, nearly half, however you want to say it, of their available offensive rebounds, available rebounds when they miss a shot are rebounded by their own team. Now, they're not good at a whole lot else offensively. Not great at a whole lot else, but they're so good on the offensive glass, it doesn't matter. Their turnover rate is 28th, 16%. Free throw rate, middle of the pack. Effective field goal percentage, middle of the pack. We talked about the Timberwolves shot profile earlier. Houston, if you want to talk about their location effective field goal percentage, it's 27th. They're 13th in actual effective field goal percentage, but they shoot a ton of mid-range jumpers because they have, guess who, Kevin Durant. They don't shoot a lot of threes. They're actually dead last in above the break threes. They're middle of the pack in corner threes. So it all works out to 29th on cleaning the glass and overall 3-point rate. So not a lot of threes, a lot of mid-range jumpers, middle of the pack free throws, but a ton of offensive rebounds leads to a lot of rim attempts. They're actually in the middle of the pack, closer to middle in terms of their percentage of shots at the rim because primarily of all the offensive rebounds. Like Durant's not getting to the rim. Like that's not Şengün is around the rim. He's getting offensive rebounds, right? And they shoot the ball well at the rim too, because a lot of these are tip-ins and dunks and stuff like that. So this is a good offensive team, primarily driven by like, let's just get every offensive rebound and we'll get a billion cracks at the apple. The actual efficiency isn't great on their half-court possessions, but then it becomes efficient because of the number of possessions that they get over the course of a game. So defensive glass, defensive glass, defensive glass. Houston's second to last in pace, but again, they just crush the offensive glass. Now, they're a really good defensive team, and there really aren't any holes in what they do on the defensive end of the floor. They are a great defensive rebounding team. They defend the three-point line well. They don't foul a lot. The only thing is they don't force a lot of turnovers, and Minnesota's actually been pretty good lately at limiting their turnovers. So it's a pretty intriguing matchup all the way around. Last year, it wasn't a great matchup for Minnesota. I think the Timberwolves are a little bit better at limiting turnovers, and Houston's a little bit worse at creating them. There's also not the Dillon Brooks thing to worry about now that he's in Phoenix. So I think if you're the Wolves, it's the glass on both sides of the floor. Give yourselves multiple bites at the apple on offense and limit Houston's second chance opportunities on defense. Much easier said than done, but that's the most important thing. Make them work. Try and get some of their guys into foul trouble because the depth isn't quite what it should have been this year for Houston. And try and play fast. Like the Wolves have played a lot faster lately, and it's worked. Play fast against this team. I think that could be to the Wolves' benefit if they can do that. And also on the defensive side for Minnesota, like Minnesota can use their length and their athleticism to their advantage. Contesting shots, forcing the three-point attempts. The Houston doesn't take a ton of them, but make sure that it's Amen Thompson taking them, or it's a solid contest on, one of their more middling type three-point shooters that shoots a fair amount of them. Like Jabari Smith shoots 6 a game at 34%. Like still get a good contest on it. Be physical with the smaller guards, smaller wing guys where you can, whether it's Reid Shepard or Aaron Holiday. Like be physical as much as you can and try and limit what they're doing because you can't do that as much with. And obviously Kevin Durant, like maybe it's Julius Randle guarding Kevin Durant. We saw a little bit of that previously. The Wolves matched up well against the Suns, of course, the last couple of years. We saw what Cat did to Durant in the playoffs 2 years ago. But even last year in the regular season, Randle against the Suns was good. I think it's Randle guarding Durant. It's being physical there, trying to be physical with Şengün as much as you can. It's Rudy's return from his suspension on Tuesday, so he hasn't played since Sunday. This should be a really fun matchup. I think the glass is the number one thing to look at, and then if the Wolves could push pace without Anthony Edwards, I think that would be an advantageous thing for the Wolves to try to do. That's all I got. Make sure to tune into the live postcast tonight with Jack and Luke right here on the Locked On Wolves YouTube live after the game. If you missed that, you can listen to the audio on the audio feed for Locked On Wolves. Same thing Saturday after the Spurs game. I'll be back on Monday. We'll recap the weekend, the Friday and Saturday games on Monday's show. Talk about the weekend that was as the Wolves do the Texas two-step against a couple of formidable West opponents in Houston and San Antonio. A big thank you for making Locked On Wolves your first listen every day. Of course, this show is free and available everywhere. That includes YouTube as well as all of your favorite audio platforms. Wherever you'd like to listen to podcasts, you can find Locked On Wolves. Also, a reminder, if you never miss an episode, check out the Everyday Club. It's built just for you. Get Locked On Wolves ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Head to lockedonwolves.supercast.com to join the club. Reminder, I'm on Discord now. You can check out the channel there. For those of you on video, we'll send you to the first ever 24/7 National NBA YouTube channel after this video on audio. Make sure that you make your second listen the NBA Game Night Show on Locked On NBA. Of course, Locked On Wolves is part of the very same Locked On Podcast Network, your local experts on all the biggest stories. Once again, I'm Ben Beecken. This is the Locked On Wolves podcast. We'll catch you next time.